Square Enix is one of the most iconic names in gaming, home to Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, Kingdom Hearts, and countless RPGs that shaped entire generations. But their story isn't just one of success, it's a tale of near bankruptcy, creative gambles, disastrous missteps, and shocking reinventions. They've stared financial ruin in the face more than once, from a game literally named Final Fantasy because the company thought it was going to be their last, to a $100 million movie bomb that almost wiped them out. And even today, Square Enix still faces tough questions about its future. This is the rise and fall, reinvention, and uncertain present of Square Enix. Square began in 1983 as a division of Den Yusha, a power line construction business in Japan. The founder's son, Masafumi Miyamoto, had a radical idea. Instead of one or two programmers doing everything, video games should be made like films, with teams of specialists handling its story, art, and code. It was a bold vision, but an expensive one. Their first projects were quirky experiments. The Death Trap and Will, the Death Trap 2, were text adventures. King's Knight mixed shooter and RPG elements, but was awkward to play. 3D World Runner was flashy and even had 3D glasses support, but critics called it a Space Harrier knockoff. And then there was Rad Racer, an NES driving game, which was their attempt to challenge Sega's Outrun. It sold reasonably well in America, but it wasn't enough to sustain the company. And by 1986, Square spun off its own company. But with no breaking hits, cash was drying up fast. Enter Hironobu Sakaguchi, a university dropout with something to prove. Sakaguchi pitched one final idea, a role-playing game inspired by Enix's Dragon Quest, but with bigger visuals and a sweeping fantasy story. Management reluctantly agreed. This title would be known as Final Fantasy. If it failed, Sakaguchi planned to quit the industry altogether. Square itself might disappear as well. But instead, it worked. Released in 1987, Final Fantasy sold over 1 million copies worldwide, 400,000 in Japan and 700,000 in North America. The miracle that they'd been waiting for finally arrived. Riding high on Final Fantasy's success, Square poured resources into sequels, leading to Final Fantasies 2 and 3 to refine RPG mechanics. Final Fantasy IV introduced the revolutionary active time battle system, making combat feel dynamic instead of purely turn-based. But it was Final Fantasy VI, released in 1994, that cemented Square's reputation as storytellers. Its ensemble cast, steampunk setting, and unforgettable villain, Kefka, showed RPGs could rival novels and films in narrative depth. Square didn't stop at Final Fantasy. They experimented with spin-offs and new IPs. Secret of Mana brought multiplayer to the RPG format. Chrono Trigger, made with Enix's Yuji Horii and Dragon Ball creator Akira Toriyama, became one of the most beloved RPGs of all time. Final Fantasy Tactics introduced political intrigue and tactical gameplay that still influence strategy games today. Then came the boldest move yet. In the mid-1990s, Nintendo was developing the Nintendo 64, but sticking with expensive cartridges. Sony's new PlayStation, with its CD-ROM format, offered cheaper production and far more storage. And that is when Square made the shocking break. They abandoned Nintendo for their longtime partner and brought Final Fantasy VII to Sony. The gamble paid off. Released in 1997, Final Fantasy VII sold over 10 million copies worldwide. Its cinematic cutscenes, complex storylines, and 3D visuals turned JRPGs into mainstream phenomena. And ironically, with the success, it helped Sony crush its rivals. and for a time, Squaresoft stood as the king of RPGs. With the PlayStation era success, Squaresoft had money and ambition, and that is when they made a terrible decision and decided to expand beyond video games into Hollywood. In 1997, they founded Square Pictures in Hawaii with the goal of making feature-length CGI films. And I don't know if anybody remembers their project, but it was titled Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. The technology was groundbreaking, and the film's CGI characters were some of the most realistic seen at the time. But honestly, the movie just lacked the magic of Final Fantasy. It was slow, confusing, and honestly, nobody knew how it was even connected to Final Fantasy. There was literally no connection. Released in 2001, Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within cost $137 million to make, but it only grossed $85 million. The losses were staggering, and Square's stock tanked, and ultimately, Square Pictures would shut down soon after. And the company founder, Sakaguchi, who spearheaded the project, resigned from his executive role. The disaster was actually so severe that a planned merger with Enix was cancelled due to it. Enix's leadership even publicly stated that they weren't interested in merging with a company bleeding so much cash. And for the second time in history, Squaresoft found itself teetering on the edge of collapse. However, despite the chaos, Squaresoft managed to stabilize. Final Fantasy X on the PlayStation 2 was a huge success. And afterwards, they released Kingdom Hearts, an unlikely crossover of Disney characters and Squaresoft RPG mechanics, but it became a global phenomenon and was a huge success. And honestly, these hits, like Final Fantasy X and Kingdom Hearts, gave Squaresoft enough credibility to reopen the merger talks with Enix. And by 2003, the deal went through. Square and Enix officially merged on April 1st, forming Square Enix. For fans, this was a dream. The studio behind Final Fantasy joining forces with the creators of Dragon Quest. I mean, these were literally the biggest JRPG companies in Japan. The merger also gave Square Enix financial stability. In the years that followed, they expanded further, buying Taito in 2005, the company behind Space Invaders, and acquiring Eidos Interactive in 2009. This brought Western franchises like Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, and Hitman under their umbrella. For the first time, Square Enix was more than just a Japanese RPG studio. They'd become a global publisher. The 2000s and 2010s marked Square Enix's reign as a franchise powerhouse. Final Fantasy X, 11, and 12 each broke sales records, and Final Fantasy XI became one of their first successful console MMOs. And Final Fantasy XIII, though divisive, still sold millions. Dragon Quest VIII was a phenomenon in Japan, and Dragon Quest XI later proved the series still had tons of appeal. Meanwhile, Kingdom Hearts grew into a major franchise with multiple sequels and spin-offs, creating a passionate fanbase worldwide. Square Enix's Western acquisitions also paid off. Tomb Raider was rebooted in 2013 to critical acclaim and strong sales. And Deus Ex: Human Revolution revived a dormant franchise. By 2020, Square Enix's numbers told the story. Final Fantasy had sold over 173 million copies, Dragon Quest sold over 85 million, and Kingdom Hearts topped 36 million. It seemed like Square Enix had mastered both Eastern and Western audiences. But success never lasts forever, and Square Enix's modern era has been turbulent. In 2020, they launched The Avengers. With the Marvel brand behind it, expectations were massive, but repetitive missions, a confusing live service model, and poor post-launch support caused the game to flop. Square Enix even later admitted it failed to recover its enormous budget, and the game was shut down in 2023. And more recently, in 2024, Life is Strange: Double Exposure was heavily criticized. Fans rejected its narrative direction, and sales were far lower than expected. Internally, Life is Strange: Double Exposure was labeled as a financial disaster that dragged down operating profit. Even their strongest title, Final Fantasy XIV, began to show cracks. After years of dominance as their most profitable game, subscriber numbers dipped following the Dawn Trail expansion. Even Square Enix's president admitted that the game had lost some of its shine, worrying investors. And once again, the company that had been saved by Final Fantasy, saved by a merger, and saved by its own franchises, is now kind of being tested again. Today, Square Enix is still a giant, but not an invincible one. They lean heavily into nostalgia. The Final Fantasy VII Remake project specifically, which although I've enjoyed Remake and Rebirth so far, the sales have underperformed. They've also re-released classic Dragon Quest titles, and collections of older games, which sell well, but they don't really win any new fans. At the same time, their attempts to chase modern trends from live service Marvel projects or branching narrative experiments have often backfired. And yet, their legacy is undeniable. Square Enix has survived multiple brushes with bankruptcy, reinvented itself more than once, and produced some of the most beloved games in history. Their story is a reflection of the RPGs they create.
An emissary from Wutai is here.
Square Enix didn't just create franchises, they created worlds that defined generations of gamers. From a game literally called Final Fantasy to billion-dollar RPG juggernauts, they've survived through sheer reinvention. But the question now is, can they survive this next chapter? What's your favorite Square Enix memory? Was it Final Fantasy VII, Chrono Trigger, Kingdom Hearts, or something else? Let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoy deep dives into gaming history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video. This is West Coast Ninja signing out. I will see you in the next video.